Thanks for tuning in to more NFL Draft Talk on the Our-Lads Football Network, inside Our-Lads NFL Depth Charts. We talk Cincinnati Bengals football with James Rapien. He covers the Bengals for All Bengals. That's what Sports Illustrated. It also has the podcast called the Locked On Bengals Podcast. Can be heard daily. James has not been with us for a while, so I'm glad to have him back as we recap the Bengals draft. James, good talking to you again.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
You got it, James. So, tell me, first of all, tell me a little bit about how things are going, because I know when we first started the first time we had our conversation, it's been so long that I can't even remember when it was, but you were just kind of getting started. So how's things going now?
Oh, things are going well. Absolutely. Up and running. Feel like we're a well-oiled machine at allbengals.com. And you're right. We had just launched. I think it might've been a month after launch or so. And the draft was a couple of weeks. We launched last April. And so the draft was a couple of weeks after that. Yeah. So Joe Burrow mania took over.
That's right.
But this draft was much, not that one was not organized or anything, but I just think our ducks were in a row more, and we were certainly ready to go from a video standpoint, technology-wise, right? Everybody's used to these virtual calls and things, but a year ago we were figuring out exactly what to do. So yeah, things are going well. We have a great fan base, great following, and we couldn't be more thankful for it.
I want to remind everybody that you can order the Our-Lads draft guide right here, the 2021 draft guide. Don't worry about the fact that the draft is over, because now you know, especially if you're a Bengals fan, you know which of your players are on your team, and you can check out their profiles here. And that also includes several players that went undrafted and signed, who we'll talk about in just a little bit. And then we'll also have more draft recap shows coming up here in the coming weeks. I think starting tomorrow, which is Wednesday the 5th, with the New England Patriots and Evan Lazar. But James is actually the first of our series of shows. So, James, let's get right off the bat with Chase, because there was a lot of talk, pitch or chase, chase or pitch. Offensive line was definitely in there because we knew that the Bengals needed to upgrade the offensive line. But what was there a deciding factor? Was there one specific thing that the Bengals either admitted or that you kind of got the feeling was why they decided to go with Chase?
They thought he was the better player. They thought he was the better prospect. And in that, there's so much talk about Joe Burrow and who Joe Burrow wants. There was never a scenario where he said, "I'll go get my guy." He certainly gave rave reviews about Jamar Chase and gave his opinion. But the Bengals, I think if Joe Burrow didn't exist and Andy Dalton was the quarterback or Carson Palmer was the quarterback, they would have been in love with Jamar Chase, and it wouldn't have really changed much. They just got more info from a guy like Burrow who had been around them. And I mean, what's not to like? You're talking about a guy, 11-foot broad jump, 41-inch vertical, 4.34 40-yard dash. And so all of the athletic numbers and testing were there. And guess what? He was dominating the SEC at 19 years old. Yeah, you might wonder about the height or the arm length a little bit, but he has no trouble high pointing the ball, has really strong hands, 20 touchdowns the last time he took the field. And yeah, the cherry on top is he already has a rapport with Joe Burrow. So that does help. But I just thought that I think they viewed it as, we have Jamar Chase as our top guy. Then after him was Penei Sewell. And then after him was Kyle Pitts. And they wanted one of those three early in the process. They targeted those three, and they just gave Chase the edge over a guy like Sewell, not because they didn't prioritize or weren't focused on upgrading the offensive line, but just how highly they felt about Chase and his ability to translate to the next level.
Yeah, because you had to figure going into the draft that the Bengals were in such a good position that they could just sit there. Like you said, one of those three players were going to be there. Whoever it was, they were going to get, and they ended up the opportunity to take Chase. And yeah, like you said, it is the cherry on top that he played with Burrow. That's an awfully nice, sweet tasting cherry that is going to go off really well.
Doubt.
Yeah. I think what a lot of people thought was, well, Samples their tight end. He didn't show much in receiving, and they already have T. Higgins, and they already have a pretty good core of a couple of guys at receiver. It looks pretty good. But inside the Bengals, we also knew that Taylor wants to run a lot of 11 personnel as much as he can. And if you're going to run 11 personnel as much as you can, you better get 3 really good receivers out there, which they have now.
Exactly. And the thing that Chase brings that T. Higgins doesn't necessarily bring, certainly Tyler Boyd doesn't in the slot, even though he's one of the best slot receivers in the NFL, downfield. The one thing that Joe Burrow struggled with last year, and the offense as a whole struggled with, they couldn't push the ball downfield. Now, part of that, sure, was offensive line, but part of it was A.J. Green wasn't the A.J. Green that we remember. John Ross never got in sync, and by week 3 was never in the mix again. And T. Higgins, for as good as he was as a rookie, doesn't appear to be this downfield separator. And a guy like Chase, they viewed as, we got to get this guy because he's going to be able to do that. He's going to be able to win when he's double teamed or win downfield and extend defenses. So Tyler Boyd doesn't get doubled. There were teams that doubled Boyd last year from the slot, which is rare.
Yeah.
That isn't something that happens a lot, but it was happening. And it really hurt the Bengals in their ability to push the ball downfield with what they had. And that's a safety net, Tyler Boyd is, for Joe Burrow. So now you open him up. It should open up the running game. And obviously they knew they had to address the trenches, which I'm sure we're going to get to. But Chase, he was just that dynamic threat that the other 2 guys, Higgins and Boyd, didn't offer. And I think it's clear that he has the highest ceiling of the 3 as well, which is noteworthy.
Yeah, as much as everybody loves Pitts, the fact is that it's been, I don't even know when the last time a player has been drafted from the tight end position in the top 10 or the top 5 and become a star. It's just rare. Not saying that Pitts isn't going to become a really good player, but it's just a risky proposition. Why do that when you have a superior receiver staring right in your face for a particular need that you have as well?
Exactly. And honestly, part of the decision was made for him because Pitts was off the board.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just Sewell or Chase.
Yeah.
And if the Falcons would have went Chase, I'm confident that the Bengals would have went Sewell. And then they would have said, all right, we'll find our downfield threat later.
Okay.
Now, let's say the 49ers didn't trade up to number 3, and instead the Dolphins stayed there and would have taken Chase. And then Pitts goes, and then Sewell goes, or something of that nature. Or if Sewell goes at 4, the Bengals would have been comfortable at taking Pitts.
Yeah.
So they just wanted one of those 3 guys in that order, and they got the guy that was at the top of their board.
All right, now we're talking about the offensive line, and what really worked out is that the Bengals were able to still draft 3 linemen overall, including Carmen, in round 2. And is he taking a look at the way the line is set up? Are they going to move him inside?
They are. They're going to start him inside. I would expect him to be the starting right guard this year.
Okay.
Maybe he goes to the left side. That's where he played at Clemson. The reason I think they line him up on the right side is, 1, he gets to play alongside a veteran in Riley Reef. I think that would be extremely beneficial at right tackle. That's where Reef's going to line up. And then 2, you have 2 left guards. Xavier Su'a-Filo spent most of his time during his career at left guard. Quentin Spain, the same thing. So why not keep those guys where they're comfortable and start the rookie at right guard?
Okay, and then I tell you what, let's jump and talk a little about the other offensive lineman. He took the kid from East Carolina in round 4. Our lads had him as a 6th round guy, but he took him in the 4th round. But he's a 4-year starter. He did have some injury problems last year. Is he another player that is best suited to move inside at guard? And then also they took the center from Georgia in round 6, Trey Hill, a second team all SEC the last 2 years, another player that has the ability to play just about anywhere on the offensive line.
Exactly. So let's start with Deontay Smith, because the reason they love Deontay Smith is, you're right, he could kick inside, but 1, they don't plan on him starting, I don't think, this year.
Yeah.
It's not like Jackson Carman where he's going to be kind of this plug and play type guy. 2, he's got the measurables: 35-inch arms, 85-inch wingspan. And yeah, this was a deep tackle class or deep offensive line class. Not many guys with 35-inch arms and an 85-inch wingspan that you can build around. Now, he does need to gain some weight, but they view him as from what I've been told, a tackle that obviously has the versatility to go inside, but they want to try to develop him, and maybe he can become a tackle of the future type. And he's a guy that just hasn't been developed much at ECU. They had a coaching change, and I know the culture there was rough, and they looked at his talent and they said, all right, I think we can get something out of him. Maybe not in 2021, but down the line. As far as Trey Hill, it's going to be interesting because the one big weakness and big question mark now on the Bengals offensive line is that center spot. You got Trey Hopkins coming back from a torn ACL. Billy Price has been extremely underwhelming during his 3 years, and he's trying to establish himself a little bit and would love to start at center. At the same time, you got a guy in Hill who can play both guard spots. He can play center. And while I don't expect him to necessarily start, there's no reason why he shouldn't try to push, because there's an opening there. There's a chink in the armor. And if he performs well and maybe Hopkins isn't ready to go, why shouldn't he think that he can beat out a guy like Billy Price for the starting job? So they certainly increased their depth on the offensive line. And that was the key. Last year, for as bad as the Bengals offensive line was, the talent was better than we saw. It's just they had so many injuries. I mean, they had to start Quentin Spain at tackle 1 week. They were moving guys all around. It was really tough. So they needed to upgrade their depth, and I certainly think they did that with adding these 3 guys.
Yeah, I've seen a ton of centers get drafted late, some undrafted, that end up earning starting positions early in their careers. It can happen. So we'll keep an eye on that. By the way, what about Price? Because Pollock comes back, and that's a big addition to the team as well, the offensive line coach. And Price actually played pretty well when Pollock was there.
And that's the key. Frank Pollock obviously helped draft Billy Price, thought highly of him. And the key to me, can Billy Price overcome arm length? Can he overcome some of these technique issues that he's had? It's going to help to have Frank Pollock, because I don't know if, by the way, if Pollock's this elite offensive line coach, but I do know that Jim Turner wasn't a good offensive line coach, at least at the NFL level. Okay. And so if you're going from bad to average, well, that's an upgrade.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think worst case, they've upgraded in that area. And so you got these young guys coming in, even a guy like Michael Jordan, right? Who is, I don't want to say responsible, but he's the one who got bull rushed during the play where Joe Burrow got injured. Yep. It's like, he's got talent. Fred Johnson, they have talent. Akeem Adeniji, they need someone who can potentially bring it out of them. And if you hit on just 3 or 4 of those guys long term, your offensive line is much, much better than it's been over the past 5 seasons.
All right. Now, another need for the Bengals was going to be to add some more edge rushers. And they added, I believe, 3 edge rushers in this draft, with Osai in round 3, Sample round 4, Hubert in round 7. Osai is actually one of my favorite players in the draft. I really, because I knew he was going to, he's like one, I like to usually take about 5 guys that will get drafted in the middle rounds that I think had really good college careers. And Osai is one of them. He always seemed to come up big at the biggest moments. So I'm intrigued by that player. Also, Sample probably needs some more technique work, but he's a physical, nasty guy, sort of like Carmen. And then you have Hubert, who was a 3-year starter, hustle player at Kansas State, team captain, all of that. So talk about the additions of those 3 players and how important it's going to be for the edge rushing.
Well, let's start with Osai, because you lose a guy like Carl Lawson, who's this twitchy edge rusher with plenty of athleticism, and you get Osai. That's a hell of a way to recoup your losses from Lawson. And they're kind of the same sort of prospect. I think, Lawson might be a little more bendy, a little better seasoned, or a little more seasoned coming out of Auburn. But Osai doesn't have the edge or the injury issues that Lawson had. So you look at him falling. That's a great pickup, I think. And I think he's going to be a day one type contributor, a guy that can certainly get after opposing quarterbacks. So that might have been, and I love the Chase pick, that might have been their best pick this entire draft of all 10 selections when you look at the value and what he could potentially do in year 1 and beyond. As far as Cam Sample, they love his versatility, his ability to not only play on the edge, but move inside if they need him to. Certainly has the strength that they believe he can add about 10 more pounds or so to move inside. And I wouldn't be surprised that off he's a day one type contributor as well.
Okay.
And then a guy like Hubert, look, it's a 7th round pick. I wouldn't be shocked if he makes the team. And the reason I wouldn't be shocked about that, obviously he has all the college production, didn't test crazy or anything like that, but produced like a wild man at Kansas State. And he's coming in, and he told us that He would go to all the Wildcats special teams meetings as a senior. He's one of the star defensive players, certainly wasn't playing special teams, would go to the meetings to try to learn as much as he could about special teams because he knew that in the NFL, guess what? He was going to cut his teeth on special teams. And that's no doubt about it. That's what he's going to need to do. And I know Darren Simmons, the Bengals special teams coordinator, he lost some guys on that side of things, on that important third phase. Wouldn't be shocked at all if Hubert, from just work ethic, attitude alone, finds a way onto the 53-man roster, or certainly the practice squad. So I like all three guys that they got. And again, much like the offensive line, edge rusher, they needed to bolster the depth after Carlos Dunlap, after Carl Lawson, after some of these guys went out the door. And they like their top guys in Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, but they needed to get better behind those guys. And I think they certainly did that.
By the way, Osai, who played a lot of linebacker at Texas, is he just going to be purely an edge rusher for the Bengals? How's that going to work?
I think that's the plan. That certainly would be the plan for me. I would use him much like they did Carl Lawson, but probably not as, an every down type guy like Lawson was last year, but just let him get after the passer and maybe he can learn as he goes and develop his game because he's certainly athletic enough, right? But that's how I would anticipate him being used as a rookie.
Yeah, because that's the one area on the team that I don't believe I noticed that the Bengals did much anything in the draft at all. Again, Asai's going to be an edge rusher. They made some impact moves the last couple of years, and they have some young players back there. Logan Wilson's my favorite, but they still need some more linebackers, don't they? They have to upgrade a little bit in that department.
Yeah, they're banking on these guys to take big steps forward, starting with Logan Wilson. I think his role's certainly going to increase. I think Akeem Davis-Gaither, they're hoping he's going to take another couple steps forward as well. You talked about two guys that they love, their third and fourth round picks from a year ago. I wouldn't be shocked if they bring Josh Bynes back, though. I think that the door's kind of open for a veteran presence to help some of these young guys. He's still out there, so we'll see about that. And then Jermaine Pratt, it's kind of prove-it year for him as he enters year three. I thought he took a step back last year after what was kind of an up-and-down rookie season. I thought he could take a couple steps forward, and he didn't. And so we'll see now how he fits into the mix. I certainly think he's in there, but this is kind of a prove-it season for him.
Let's also, talking about the defensive line, Tyler Shelvin was the other fourth-round pick at LSU, another LSU Bengal. And what's interesting about Shelvin is he's our lad's top-rated nose tackle. So you're talking about pretty much a one-dimensional run-stopping, force, somebody that needs to occupy space and blockers.
No doubt. No doubt. And I actually talked to a couple people from LSU, and they're like, great value in the fourth round. He's quick. He's got a quick first step, for his size, but at least 350 pounds and certainly someone that can be a problem in the AFC North. And that's what I think this was. This was an AFC North pick where you look around and, you got DJ Reader. Why not get a guy like Shelvin who can come in and against Baltimore's rushing attack, or that two-headed monster in Cleveland, or now Najee Harris in Pittsburgh?
Right.
You got guys that can contain the run. I won't forget this. Joe Burrow, his second game, they had lost to the Chargers. 4 days later, they come back. They go to Cleveland, Thursday Night Football. Joe Burrow throws 61 times and is just going blow for blow against the Browns, which obviously had a much better roster. And on the final possession of the game, essentially for Cleveland, they run it, I think, 7 or 8 times all the way downfield and score. And that two-headed monster of Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, and that's something that can't happen if you're going to win games in the AFC North. And that's what I think this was. This was a guy in Shelvin who, if he keeps his weight under control, offers them good value at that spot in the fourth round.
Okay, now also the pick of a kicker, the first kicker off the board, Evan Mcpherson. And we all knew that the Bengals needed a kicker. And so not a surprise that they went and drafted one. Say what you want about using a fifth-round pick, whatever. But they obviously like the kid, and he's going to hopefully start right away.
No doubt. I mean, he better start right away if you're taking him in the fifth round.
That's right.
And they did this a couple of years ago with Jake Elliott, where they drafted Jake Elliott in the fifth round. And I think it was 153rd overall, give or take a pick, and Mcpherson was 149th overall. And Elliott didn't make the 53 because Randy Bullock had a better camp than him. Well, I'll tell you right now, if I'm the Bengals, barring Mcpherson getting injured, he's making it over Austin Seibert because he's just more talented.
Yeah.
And that's part of it is this kid can kick from 50 plus at his pro consistently. By the way, this isn't just a kick here or there. 50 plus consistently at his pro day. He made 21 of 22 kicks, including a 60 plus yarder. His lone miss was from 58 yards. He's just a really high end talent. From what I've been told, a hard worker and someone that if you hit on him, it offers great value in round 5 because look, we're in a division, the Bengals are, where we see Justin Tucker twice a year. You're competing in the same conference as a Kansas City Chiefs team that eventually you want to try to compete with. Well, they have Harrison Butker. What a weapon it is to have a guy that can make 50-plus yard field goals
Absolutely.
regularly. And that's how they view this, is they think he's that guy, and they have a great special teams coach in Darren Simmons, and they think they can maximize Mcpherson's value and get the most out of him.
Now, when it's interesting that the Bengals were the team to sign Drew Chrisman because I had talked glowingly of him for a couple of years now and really loved the kid since I saw him. I think it was his freshman season, and I was just so impressed with his ability to pin teams consistently inside the 20, inside the 10. And I was surprised that he wasn't drafted, but he's a punter, okay, and you never know. He's been around for a while, so maybe he hasn't progressed the way that. And look, I get guys that are more precision punters don't normally get the draft status as you would as maybe a power leg. But the reason I think this is interesting is because Kevin Huber's done a pretty good job. And I figured if Chrisman was going to go somewhere, he'd go somewhere where he thought he would have a chance to win the job. But I could easily see Chrisman having a really good camp and still starting somewhere else in the NFL. Were you surprised that the Bengals signed him or that he decided he would sign with the Bengals?
That part, the latter, is because, of course, if you're the Bengals, you got a guy in Kevin Huber. You're probably going to want to save his legs some during training camp. You don't want him to make all the kicks. And so, yeah, why not bring in a punter? But is Chrisman going to push him? Is this a battle? Maybe it is. Maybe they look at his talent and they're like, wait, he's still available, in the 7th round. And they called him and said, hey, if you make it, you can come compete with Kevin Huber to kind of be the heir to the throne, who Huber and Chrisman, both Cincinnati natives. Huber went to the University of Cincinnati, Chrisman, Ohio State. And man, I mean, you talk about replacing one Cincinnati native, a Pro Bowler, and Huber potentially with another one. I get it. The Bengals are loyal. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if this potentially becomes a competition. Huber was a free agent. They signed him to just a 1-year deal. I don't know. I think there might be a chance here where Chrisman, again, he's going to have a really good camp to dethrone someone who's been good for over a decade. Sure. But I wouldn't rule it out completely. And it's certainly something to watch and eyebrow raising, as far as eyebrow raising can be for, punter talk.
Yeah, right. The team also added Chris Evans, the running back from Michigan. Will he have a chance? Because I know that there's one opening that I noticed when I was going through special teams that they could use a punt returner. I'm not sure if that's something. I don't think Chris Evans did a whole lot of that at Michigan, but I only bring that up not because I don't think Cincinnati can use some more depth at running back, because they can. But it was the 6th round, so I was just a little bit surprised that the Bengals went in that direction unless they have a plan for him.
Yeah, and I think part of it here is you lose Giovanni Bernard, and Chris Evans is a guy that has plenty of tread left. Didn't take many hits, didn't play much over the past couple of years. I think had 16 carries last year for Michigan. But he stood out at the Senior Bowl. His ability to run routes, his natural hands, make plays against obviously NFL competition. And so that combined with his pro day at Michigan, where he just tested off the charts from an athletic standpoint. I mean, some of his numbers were comparable to Jamar Chase. And it's like, wow, really? Like that's what you're doing. And he was a slot receiver in high school and during his early stages of his college career at Michigan. So you're like, well, he can run routes. They like his intelligence and think he can pick it up from a pass blocking standpoint. Why not bringing him in? Because he did test like an elite athlete as well, and see what he can offer you. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if he makes this team as a 3rd down option type of back along with Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon. Now it's an uphill climb for any 6th rounder, but I think the door is certainly at least cracked for that. And you're right. If he can contribute on special teams, whether it's as a returner or otherwise, I think he does have a shot. And again, that's really based on his athletic profile And then you go back to his freshman season at Michigan. He did explode onto the scene a bit and have some success. So it's been a while since he's had success on the NFL field, but they were pretty blown away by his traits that he displayed at the Senior Bowl and at his pro day.
And by the way, the team also signed Puka Williams, who opted out after 4 games at Kansas. He had a big freshman season. I remember that. And then they also added Pro Wells, the tight end out of TCU, who had a draftable grade. Both Williams and Wells both had draftable grades. The Bengals were able to sign both players. So I think a guy like, I even think Puka Williams has a shot to be right in the mix as well, battling for one of those positions behind Mixon, don't you?
No doubt, no doubt, because you're right. I mean, 2,200 yards in his first 2 college seasons. The production's there. The off-the-field stuff is why he didn't get drafted. That, along with his size. I mean, you're talking about a 175-pounder. You know, he's not going to be an every-down running back by any stretch at 5'9", 175. At the same time, does have that explosiveness. Maybe they do try to work him in as a returner here or there, give him the opportunity to prove himself that way. And so I would not be shocked at all if at worst, you know, he's a special teams type guy because of the talent and the traits that he brings. I would give the edge to Evans if I had to predict, but certainly a good signing by the Bengals from a talent standpoint, getting him there undrafted.
And then finally, Antonio Phillips, who had a 6th round grade from our lads, the cornerback from Ball State. And the Bengals seemed like they were pretty secure after the offseason. What most of the guys that played last year, they weren't a very deep unit last year as far as snaps. It was like 6 guys played the majority of the snaps in the second. It was very weird, but I didn't look at that being a key need, and it wasn't. They didn't use a draft pick on a cornerback or even a safety, but they did sign Antonio Phillips.
Yep, and I like this signing because you're right. Draftable guy, certainly someone that you're surprised to see go undrafted. And while they did add a Mike Hilton, while they did go out and add Chidobe Awuzie, 2 starting corners alongside a guy like Trey Waynes, who missed all of last year, but they obviously paid big money to, 3 years, $42 million in the 2020 offseason. They like those cornerbacks. Eli Apple, another one that they brought in, they like them, but they need some kind of young depth. And so, maybe he makes the team, maybe he doesn't, maybe he's a practice squad type guy, but it was certainly someone I bet that, like our lads, they had a draftable grade on. He started to fall, and they're like, hey, if we could get him undrafted, who knows? Maybe he hitches his wagon, to the Bengals and is able to maybe not make the team,
sure,
but certainly be one of these developmental young pieces that they could have in the organization.
And I just thought it was interesting, again, that was it more of talent, personnel, or is that really how the Bengals want to play defense, where they feel we only need 6 DBs most of our scheme packages, and that's it? So unless there's injuries, we're pretty good with 6. Or again, is that because they just didn't feel comfortable going to a 7th or an 8th defensive back?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a mixture. And this year, I think we're going to get our answer with Lou Anarumo as much as Zach Taylor, because I know there's a lot of people critical of Zach Taylor, and rightfully so. Same thing with Lou Anarumo. I think people were shocked that he was still brought back for a 3rd season. Yeah, okay. Lou Anarumo, that is. And so now you got guys, cornerback-wise, that fit his profile. Mike Hilton, extremely physical. Awuzie, physical. Trey Waynes, they like his ability. As much as it's to run and cover, they like him being a solid tackling type defensive back. And so you put Jesse Bates back there as well, along with Von Bell, who certainly upgraded and had an impact last year on the secondary. They want to be this tough physical secondary, and we'll see if they can pull that off.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised hearing that from the outside. I understand when you're inside and you're a Bengals fan, you watch every play, you know what's going on. But then again, when you're losing, you want to fire someone. Zach Taylor's going to get another. All right, fire the defensive coach. But as you said in the beginning, there was a ton of injuries on this Bengals team. And I also think that he didn't get the players and the scheme fits that made sense for what he wants to do. So whether it's a coincidence or not, the fact is that it's time. And This is going to be a big year for both guys.
No doubt, no doubt about it. I mean, they go out and they get Trey Hendrickson, for example, a guy that fits what they want to do. They're probably going to extend the Sam Hubbards and the Jesse Bateses of the world in the coming months. And so they've really invested a ton of resources, specifically in free agency. And then last year, specifically in linebacker, this year, edge rusher. The defense needs to be better. It should be better. And then on offense, if the offensive line holds up,
Yeah.
there aren't many flaws, right? I mean, they're really not. You got a three-headed monster at receiver, Chase
Right.
Boyd Higgins. You have solid tight ends. I'm not going to say great, but solid tight ends in Sample and Uzama. And then Joe Mixon, who should be, from a talent standpoint, I think, one of the best running backs in the NFL. And it just hasn't happened yet. He's never even been a Pro Bowler, had some injury issues last year. So it's certainly a prove-it year for a lot of those guys at Paul Brown Stadium.
All right, James, great job as always. We look forward to talking to you sometime around camp so we can preview the season. And again, Locked On Bengals podcast, that's every day. Where do they go to check out the podcast? And of course, to go to the the All Bengals. I'll be talking All Dolphins. Elaine Poupart does all of my Dolphin shows. So I'm so used to saying All Dolphins. But hey, he's in the family, right? So
yeah, no doubt about it.
All Bengals, of course, with Sports Illustrated. How do they find the Bengals podcast?
Oh, easy. Anywhere you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, wherever you get it, it's there. We got it up. iHeartRadio. So it's the only daily Bengals podcast out there. So if you're looking for Bengals content, it's the way to go.
All right, James. Great job. We'll talk to you again next time.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
You got it.